Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski. Okay, today on the podcast, we're down in Florida. I don't know if she's a snowbird, but we're down in Florida in the winter. Today on the podcast, welcome Dana Dicicco Piccolini. Hi, Dana.
Good morning, Matthew. How are you?
I'm great. Let's introduce you with your first experience as with any sport. What was your first experience with competing or being involved in sports?
Back in the early 70s, when I was in junior high school, we had absolutely no options for girls because Title IX had not really been accepted yet or implemented. The only thing that I could do in 7th and 8th grade was be a cheerleader. I'm a little embarrassed about that, and it didn't last long. I did it in 7th and 8th grade because in 9th grade, you could join a varsity team if you were lucky enough to get selected to be on it and compete at the varsity level 9th through 12th grade. I was always a little quicker than the girls and definitely quicker than most of the guys. There was one boy in 6th grade that I couldn't beat anymore when I was in elementary school. So I knew I was faster than the average person for girls as well. Obviously, when I had success in 9th grade as a sprinter, I was hooked on running. But again, no off-season clubs or anything. We lived in a very small town. My dad was a musician at the university, and I was a flute player at that point. All I wanted to do at that point was become more active and more athletic, and it was a kind of a fight in my house. I had to kind of battle my dad on being able to do things.
Wow.
Fortunately, my dad worked with the soon-to-be women's cross-country and track coach at the university in the town where we lived. Because my dad was a professor there, I could go to school for free, which was fabulous.
Let's talk about high school then. I just wanted to capture, do you remember anything about your first race or your first races and the idea of how you felt about competition at that age?
Oh, yeah. I was always very competitive. I did very well as a 9th grader. In the 100, the 200, my coach was always trying to get me to run over a hurdle. Didn't want to do that. Couldn't do that. I never did that. We had a cinder track back then. I mean, I had cinders in my knees. I remember climbing over the locked fence of our high school field and track in the summertime to get in to go on a track. And at that time, IUP, I don't know that they even had a track. Well, I guess they had a track, but it must have been locked as well, and you couldn't climb that fence. So they locked the facilities back then, and you just didn't do it. You just didn't do it. But as far as I did well as a 9th grader in the 100 and the 200. In 9th grade, I qualified on a relay team to go to states, which was great because then I realized, okay, I can be competitive. But again, it was very seasonal back then. You didn't have the women's cross-country team at the high school, and girls' sports had to work around when the gym was available and when the facilities were available around the guys' schedules. I played girls' basketball in high school, and it was in the fall. We were very successful there. I wasn't a great basketball player, but again, because of my quickness, they wanted me to play and pushed me to play, and had to fight my parents a little bit about being in sports year-round because, you had your track season that was just March, April, and May, and in the fall, I wanted to play basketball. So I had to fight with my dad because I didn't want to be in marching band anymore, and I didn't want to play my flute, and I wanted to play basketball with my friends and be competitive that way. We ended up that in our basketball season, we had to play in the fall, quit playing for a while the rest of the PIAA teams played in the wintertime like the boys' sports did because our school district was so small. We only had one gymnasium, and they didn't share it with the girls. We had to work around the boys' schedule. Yeah, it was crazy.
Let me ask you the difference in your personal psychology of competing as a part of a team and as an individual sport and track.
In track, I was good as an individual, but collectively, I would win 3-4 events to actually help the team score, and we were successful that way. But in basketball, I wasn't the star. I was playing with people that became stars. They actually played at Penn State basketball. We had some really, really good athletic girls in our high school, and that were great basketball players and went on to really great careers. So I was a bench warmer. I would get put in to the game, and my role was to be fast, steal balls, and get it to the point scorers. So I knew my role, which was good. I didn't always like that role. I wanted to be out on the floor, but because I was competitive by nature. But it didn't keep me from wanting to be out there with them. And my friends were all basketball players. They were all basketball players.
Great.
But I was late to the game. I was literally late to the game. I think my first year of playing basketball was 10th grade.
Right.
That was pretty late back then. That's just the way it was. We didn't have opportunities like the kids today have.
Let's talk about the opportunities both because of being in a small school, small town, and also because of female sports at that time. What about the equipment for the track? You had a cinder track. They locked you out of it. What about shoes and uniforms and everything? Did that feel equivalent to the boys' teams?
You know, I don't know that I know the answer to that back in high school. I remember you were lucky if you got a pair of spikes. You were lucky. You didn't own your own equipment like kids today will buy their own spikes that they want to use. You just didn't do that. And it was so new for girls, like at least in my household. We didn't buy equipment for sports. You just didn't, You just didn't do that. You just didn't do it. And of course, you only worked a little bit on the weekends, so you didn't have a ton of money, and you certainly didn't want to spend it on a pair of spikes. The whole running regime, as far as how competitive it got beyond my years in sports, I didn't see that big picture at where I was at. My big picture was going to states every year in track and getting there. I never placed at states, and I was okay with that for a while until my college coach got a hold of me.
Right. Well, we're almost ready to jump into university. At what point in high school did you think, I'm going to do this in college? I am going to be a college athlete. With what level of success and what time did you realize, hey, this is going to be something I'm going to be able to do at the next level?
I feel like one of the things that I was best at was running. And it was my confidence builder, and I needed that, just who I was. I needed that confidence, and the recognition I got was through running, to the point where even my first job I got because they knew who I was because of running. Wow. I didn't know that at the time when I was going into college, but I felt like my claim to confidence was through sports, through running.
Right. Hey, let's talk about, you had the nice free ticket, so scholarships, which were probably not a thing at that level. Let's get the exact details, though. What was your hometown and the name of your high school, and then we'll move to college.
Well, I'm from Indiana, Pennsylvania. My high school was Indiana Area School District. The town we lived in is where Indiana University of Pennsylvania is located, and my dad was a professor there.
So you had free tuition.
Correct.
And did you live on campus or at home?
My home growing up was closer to most people's off-campus housing. So I lived at home, and one of the funny parts of that is when you live in Indiana and you go to university in Indiana, Pennsylvania, you're called, quote, a townie. And my biggest fear was having that townie label and only having friends that I went to high school with. I really wanted that college experience, but for me to ask my parents to pay for me to live on campus when I basically almost lived on campus was unrealistic, I just it would have been very selfish, and they weren't going to foot that bill. They made that very clear. We just lived too close to campus. I immediately, first semester, freshman year, my high school girlfriend and I pledged a sorority so that we would get to know people because we did not want to be just the townies. So that is why I joined a sorority, which is very uncharacteristic for me, and it didn't last long as well. So, but I met a lot of people and had a lot of fun that first semester. My high school, this is a funny part I forgot about, my high school PE teacher started to coach the IUP women's field hockey team. She grabbed a hold of me when we did our field hockey unit in high school and said, "Hey, I'm coaching next year. Why don't you play?"
Wow.
I thought, I didn't know how to play field hockey really, other than what she taught us. And she wanted me on that team. So she had me try out against my parents' wishes so badly. My parents were so against that. And then I made the team. I couldn't get one of the courses I needed. I needed a chemistry class and I needed a lab, but I couldn't get in. And it was tough to get your courses your freshman year. So my dad pulled strings and arranged, this is crazy. My dad pulled strings and he got me a chemistry lab during the time that they played field hockey. And I was told, you will take that chemistry class, and I had to quit the team.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. Wow. So, round 2 to the parents.
Yeah. So he actually came to the field hockey practice and told me and told my coach, and that was it. I had some field hockey players come to me and like, come on, you have to be on the team. And it's like, can't do it.
Wow.
I'm in the course. I can't do it. So yeah, that was the end of my field hockey career.
Wow.
That was my freshman year. And again, no cross-country team at IUP yet. And in the spring, back in those days, because Title IX was just being implemented, and we were very fortunate to have Ruth Podbilski. She was a real front runner with Title IX and getting the programs for women's athletics at IUP. Mm-hmm. We had to be a club first. You had to prove yourself as a club to make sure that you had enough people to be a team. And you had to do that for 2 years. So in my entrance freshman year there in the spring, that was the second year as a track club. That's when Coach Fry started coaching as well, those club teams. That was the introduction to track at IUP. We had an asphalt track for 1 or 2 years before they could afford to put the turf down.
It was an artificial track.
Artificial, yeah.
It was a little bit spongy. Do you remember your first time meeting Coach Ed Fry?
Yes. He actually was a professor of music alongside of my dad. He knew me as a little kid. We lived real close to each other, actually, at one point. I knew him as a professor of music. He was fun. He played the piano, and he was just a great, fun guy. I did not know him as a runner then. I don't know when he actually started. Well, he was a runner all along. I know that my dad, we saw the success on the track, and I make it sound like my parents weren't supportive. They were supportive.
Sure.
To a certain degree. They didn't understand the year-round stuff, and nobody really did at that point, that you needed to do it year-round, in our area anyway, as far as running was concerned. They actually arranged for him to help me in the summer one year. I wasn't ready for it. I was a sprinter, and he was making me do 400s, and I didn't do 400s. And so my little coaching with Ed Fry in senior high, maybe it was junior high, even I don't even know, in the summertime, he told my dad, she's not ready for this yet. I wasn't mentally there yet. I didn't get it. I didn't get it.
Was that one-on-one coaching, just you and Coach Fry?
Yeah. How
nice.
Lucky was I? And I didn't get it. I didn't get it.
Okay, you get to university. You're on the IUP transitional track club, hoping to become an official college sport. What was your initial success or experience there with racing at the new level as the youngest?
I didn't do badly. I think I was pretty consistent as far as our team was concerned, but collectively against other people, again, I was young. I didn't have the miles in at all. Well, before that first club season ended, Coach Fry came to me and said, you'll always be an okay sprinter, but you could be a great middle distance runner. And he had to convince me of that. I didn't get it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't need to do it in high school. I was winning everything around here, around Indiana, PA. Mm-hmm. He said, I want you to run cross country next fall. And I'm like, what's cross country? Literally, I had no idea what it was. He says, this summer, you're going to train with me, and we're going to get you ready for cross-country season. So I was a lifeguard at the local pool, and on the days that I could swing needing him to run, I would train. And he gave me a running program to train and get my mileage up. So in the fall, we had to institute that. I don't know if we were a club first or at that point, because the track team had proven that we were a team. We could be a team. I'm kind of fuzzy on that. But I know we competed as a team against other schools as a team. But we barely had enough runners. We barely had enough to have a team.
Well, let me ask you about the people who were on the team with you that very first season in cross country. Were some of them track runners? Did you know any of them? Were they people that Coach Fry had gathered around him and found? How did that group come together?
The distance runners on the track team obviously wanted to run cross country. They knew what cross country was, unlike me. And he would, go to the state meet, and he didn't have any recruiting money. So he was so smart. He found out which kids came to IUP that were at that state meet, and he would go and find them when they were on campus and say, I want you on my team. Wow. And sometimes he would talk them into it, and sometimes he wouldn't. So that's how we became a team, and he found some of those people that were great distance runners. And, Sheila Fleming, another one. He found her on campus and said, come out. And Peggy Rufinack, same thing. Mm-hmm. He found her on campus, and they became great runners for IUP and beyond.
How big was the shock to your system then? Although you had trained with Coach Fry and built up to the idea of college-level training, cross-country training, but what was practice like that first season for you personally, physically, in your first attempt?
I wasn't alone. There were several of us that never set foot on a cross-country event course ever. Our coach actually gave us his car, and where we trained was, how long was it to get out to the country club?
It was between 3 and 5 miles. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And you had to jog from campus out to the course and then do a workout. We couldn't do that. So he gave us his car. And we would drive out to the course, and then we would run, and we would drive back, and he ran out and back. And he was so dedicated. We were so lucky to have him, and I'm so lucky to have him. And it was tough on me, and of course my family was, again, not supportive of this, did not want me to run year-round like this, wanted me to concentrate on my studies, but I wanted to do it, and they let me, but they didn't like it at all. As the miles would pile up and the weight was, I looked like a waif in college. That's what you had to do. In order to be competitive in track, I knew I had to run cross country. Right. So once that became once I understood that, then changed, and I trained year round and got the miles in and worked at it, but it was never easy for me cross country, ever.
Well, let's take a look at the idea of student athlete. How was it managing academics with full-time round the year running at this point then?
Because I was from town and because my dad, we got free tuition, what I did, and I was really fortunate, I was able to take courses in the summertime. I could take 3 courses in the summer and lighten my academic load into like 12, 13, or 14 credits during each semester. So I was very blessed to be able to do that. Not everyone had that capability to do that. Fortunately, with track and cross country, you only competed on the weekends. I do feel bad for kids that play basketball. My daughter did this. They were going to 2 basketball games during the week and then playing on the weekends. Now, that's really disruptive to having a study schedule. But with track and cross country, you only had those weekend meets. So that was a better thing. It was a full-time job, basically, your running career in college. You did the work study. You were able to get a few hours of work study through the state. And I was actually the athletic director's student secretary. And that's when I was fortunate enough to get to know her as a person, again, Ruth Podbilski, who was instrumental in bringing women's athletics to IUP where they should be. She was a star boy with Title IX. We were lucky to have her.
Just take a quick insight into Ruth. How would you describe her as a person? You got to know her a little bit.
Very independent, very much student-oriented. She was denied a lot of opportunities because of being a female athlete. She put us first, man. And Coach Fry had a great relationship with her. She would find money to send us to national meets because it wasn't always there. And she had to go to bat for us, and she would. And she did. And we were able to do what we had earned. We were able to actually compete at those higher levels. She was a really good person, great golfer. She loved to golf. She really was a star. And I look back on it now, I think in the moment, we didn't realize how blessed we were because we walked into having opportunities where they had to fight for their opportunities. We were very lucky to come into athletics when we did in the late 70s because in the early 70s it wasn't there.
Right. Yeah, you were in the middle of something, so it's not apparent. It's just what's normal for you. But it was a revolutionary time. Let's talk about the other transition, because today everything's different with students being able to access funding and NIL things. What about the equipment, and what about travel? You were kind of a ragtag band thrown together trying to find your feet and get respect as a real team. What about travel to cross-country and track meets? How was that?
You know this. We had student vans that had bald tires that were terrifying to be in, and the coach would drive one van, and he would get one of the students, you had to take a course, I think, to be able to drive one of the student vans. They were terrible vans. I remember terrifying trips where we were hydroplaning and sliding on ice, and our coach drives really fast regardless of the conditions, and the student drivers would be trying to follow him and be terrified. It was terrifying. It was literally terrifying. You were in a van and all the equipment bags. Talk about safety issues. Like, good God, we survived that, No seat belts, I mean, it was nuts. It was nuts. And if you were going to a really long meet, like we would run in Maryland, Towson or James Madison, you were really lucky you'd get a coach bus, and in the back of the bus there were chairs, the seats that faced each other, and there were wild card games going on back there. It was fun, actually. We would enjoy those bus rides, but we hated the van rides, man. The van rides were terrible. And you had equipment and all kinds of things. It was crazy.
Let's talk also about coaching a little bit. What level of feedback and expertise did you get from high school coach, and how did it differ when you started working with Coach Fry?
Oh, I had a great high school coach as well. He was so kind, and his wife, they were very young, not much older than me, actually. He probably graduated college when he was 21, and I ended up teaching with him later on in life. A great person, very committed. He was a jumper in high school, I believe. He was learning how to coach runners as well at the time. But again, I was a sprinter, but he would once in the summertime, probably my junior year, he started to have us come together in the summer a little bit, like 2 days a week, and we'd meet at his house and run hills. He lived on this giant hill, and we would run hills with him, and that was the extent of our training. But it was nice that he gave us that time in the summertime to help us a little bit. But again, we couldn't get on the track; it was still locked. You didn't have that opportunity. He pushed me and helped me, but he never not forced me, but he talked about having me run the 400, and I would never do it. I mean, I just think that's the most painful race out there of the 400. Mm-hmm. Give me a mile, give me a half mile, don't make me do a 400, but it took me a while. I was the runner in high school that cheated on the mile warm up because I didn't want to run longer. I was a very lazy runner back then, and had success on the sprinting side. So I figured, what do I need to do this for? He pushed me just within my mindset, but he never really forced me to do anything beyond that. But he also used me to win, I did 3 running events, and I also did triple jump in high school it was my senior year. It was the first year girls were allowed to triple jump. Wow. You weren't allowed to triple jump before my senior year. And that's how I went to states that year. So then when Fry got a hold of me, and he had to change my mindset, and it took a little doing. He was right. Very first season, we talked about not being a sprinter anymore. And then the next year, ran that cross-country season, and then track season, I started out running the 800. That was my transition. And the 400 and the 800 were really close together in a track meet. Mm-hmm. So infrequently did I run a 400 open, but I was also running the mile relay and running a 400 there. So I did do the 400 there and trained for the 800 and had real good success with the 800. He was right. I was quick, but I needed the strength. And then before the season ended, he said, I'm going to put you in the mile. It'll help, because I was trying really hard to break 60 seconds in a 400, and I couldn't do it. I was trying to get it like a 59 or, I just wanted to do that so bad. He's like, we're going to move you up this week. Instead of running the open 8, you're going to run the 1,500 meters. And that's when they were pushing to do meters rather than, the 1,500 meters was the step before they changed it to be 1,600 meters run. That very first race, I qualified for Eastern Regionals in the 1,500 meter. And so that was like, okay, here you go. I told you. So, you're not a sprinter, you're a middle distance runner, so. And then, of course, before that season ended, I think I qualified for nationals in the 1,500 meters, but it was NAIA. And it wasn't the NCAA. Ruth Plydbilski found money, and we flew to Kansas to do that meet.
Well, what was your experience at nationals? You'd now made it to the championships at high school and now in college at the national level. How was it? You had experience. Oh, it was overwhelming. Okay, you had experience at the big meets in high school. Yeah, how was it?
So many people. But also what's interesting about that meet is that was the year of the Olympic boycott. It was a Olympic year, and people were still trying to qualify for the Olympics, not knowing it was going to be boycotted. They also made that a qualifying meet for Olympians. So we got to see white high jumping.
Right.
Was that his name? Like some brutal throwers and, that were trying to qualify. So we got to see Olympic athletes. So it was overwhelming. It was very overwhelming.
Dwight Stones. Dwight White was the football player for Pittsburgh. But, Dwight Stones.
Thank you. Right, but it's been a while since I've thought about that. Yeah.
Let me ask you about you're in the middle of it. You're in the middle of this amazing time where women's athletics was getting a foothold to be recognized and supported. You were able to get spikes. You were able to be on a track that wasn't made just out of cinders and locking you out. How did the team change for you? Were you able to observe the expansion or change in the team standing over the 4 years as you became a real accepted athletic team? Was that apparent?
Yes, it was, because there were more numbers every year. I mean, our first club year, we were bare bones, and you were doing all kinds of events that, like, I probably long jumped that year because they didn't have enough people. I was in different relays than I ever ran before, and you just like filled in the blanks where you were needed. And as the years went on, we were a respected program because we had a great coach. We had success. More people would come to him and say, I want to run. And they started to squeak out a little teeny tiny bit of scholarship money. And that was huge too. Mm-hmm. We had more numbers and more people that wanted to join and be on the team.
I want to ask you a little bit to reflect a little bit more on competition. I think as we compete, have success, you talked about it giving you confidence. A lot of that goes in the bank so that you're able to deal with not failure, but lack of exactly meeting expectations or completely winning at every race. How did you handle not winning ever, and how did you handle your own expectations as competition? You met competition that was tougher and tougher.
I'm a competitive person by nature, but the drive, I knew that I didn't have that killer drive to win at all costs. I wanted to win, but I knew I limited myself because I wasn't the strongest. I wasn't the fastest, but I did well with what I had. And we had coaches that kind of dug down and found your talent and helped you figure that out and set you in the right direction. I just look at runners now, or back then, like there were some people that would come in that would put these killer mileage weeks in, and I never wanted to do that. I did what I had to do, I guess I kind of settled, you know what I mean? I was okay with the little bit of fame I had. I didn't want it to consume my entire life, and there are people that get consumed by it, and it's the only thing they have, and I never wanted that. I didn't want this to be the only thing I was good at. So I probably didn't work as hard as I know I didn't work as hard as I could have, but I didn't get it back then. Like it just wasn't a thing then, you know, when I first started out running. I never saw that in high school. I never, didn't live that, didn't see people really I guess I saw Coach Fry being consumed by it, and I kind of thought he was a little crazy.
Well, I just want to say there'll be people listening to this, and some of the people we both know and have been through the same running in the 70s, that decade, and finding ourselves at that time of our life. You were pretty well balanced, and maybe decades ahead of some of us. You have a good attitude about competition, about yourself, about your confidence. Do you think that experience of competing, succeeding, and figuring out the role that competition could play in your life affected you later in life? What do you feel that there were lessons and changes from that period that are with you now?
Absolutely. I may have alluded earlier that I got my first job because they knew who I was because of the track and running. And I applied for a teaching position. I had a teaching degree, and my teaching degree was home economics back in the day. Instead of having 4 teachers per grade level, there was 1 teacher per high school. So it was tough to get a teaching job in my field. And I applied for a job outside of Indiana, PA, but I wanted to stay close to home because I had a boyfriend, kind of a deal. I applied, and they already had someone in mind for the position that had been subbing for them in the same field for years. After the interview, they called me and said, well, we have the teaching position filled, but we need a food service director for 1 year. Would you consider that and coach track? And I'm thinking, I don't know how to be a food service director. They said, well, the food service director that's going on maternity will help you. And I thought, well, what do I do? I took that job, and it's because they knew who I was. And that sat well with me, just that they knew who I was from running. That, again, that was my confidence builder. And absolutely, that helped me forever, forever. Absolutely. I feel like I was this little lump of clay. This is cliche. And when I went to IUP in terms of running, Coach Fry actually kind of molded me into what the best I could possibly be on the track and in cross country. I'll be forever indebted to him for that. It's like I was not a runner when I went to college, and I felt like when I graduated, I was a runner. I didn't have that mentality, that mindset back then at all. I definitely gained confidence, team building. You do what you got to do to help a team.
Well, you've described your relationship with Coach Fry well, the long relationship you had with him, your admiration and gratitude for him. Anything else to say about him? Sadly, for people who don't know him and his career, he's passed now.
Yeah. Again, he would find whatever talent you had, and he would just pull it out of you. And he cared so much about his teams and his runners as individuals. And I know that he has helped many, many, many students. I can't even fathom how many kids that they actually helped. And we were blessed to have all of our coaches in college were really kind and helpful. And if you ever needed anything, you could go to him, absolutely, for sure. And he would help you on or off the field. We know that he was trying to recruit a young girl from out east that was very poor, and they came to a visit at IUP. The car wasn't going to make it back home. It needed repaired before they could get on the road to go back to Philadelphia area. Wow. And he paid for that car to be repaired before that recruit, she was just a recruit at this point, went back to Philadelphia area.
Wow.
And did he get the athlete? Absolutely. He got her.
Yeah, definitely. That's great. That's a nice story. How do you think either your high school coach or Coach Fry then affected you? Because in your first job, you became track coach. How did you transition to being coach?
Well, I was an assistant coach, but the lessons I learned about how to train were very different than high school. But again, I was competing at different events. I think the kindness part was first and foremost, that you wanted the kids to respect you, but you also wanted them to have fun. And that I think is critical. And I was blessed to, in my end of my teaching career, to coach cross country with a good friend of mine from Indiana School District where I was teaching. And we made sure that our kids had fun on and off the training course. We were very successful with our boys program to the point where I'm really proud of a runner at IUP right now. I've actually 3 of my runners from high school are running very, very well for IUP now. And we made sure that we had fun on and off the cross country course. And I think that was critical. Kindness and having fun was really important. I dreaded cross country season every year, but I still did it in college. I knew I had to be competitive in track, but we still had fun doing it.
Great. Well, who are those kids now, the people that you have an impact on at IUP now?
Evan Weaver, he's running middle distance, and actually he's running a little longer now. He's probably doing the 5,000, 3,000. Kendall Brennan, who is actually up for a PSCA title in the 800 meters. He's a great kid, great runner, really strong runner, and he wanted to go to Pitt he wanted to go Division I in the worst way, and he did. He went to Pitt. But I didn't think it was going to work, but I didn't want to tell him that. I told his mom that. I said, I think he would do really well at IUP and really like it there. Took 1 year, and he decided that's not for me, being in the city. He's a hometown kid. He's back at IUP now, running very, very well. I think he's going to win the PSCA title, and he's actually got one of the fastest times in the nation in the 800 right now. So, great kid.
Excellent.
It's not because of my coaching. He's just a great kid. But we had fun. We actually, every year, if you ran all summer with us, we ran all summer with the kids. We would meet Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that was really important to keep everybody running in the summer. At the end of the summer, if you ran all summer, I have an outdoor pizza oven, and that was their reward for coming. We would have everybody for outdoor pizza, and they all learned how to be really great pizzaiolas. They all make their own pizzas and fire them up in the wood fire pizza oven every year. So we had fun doing that. We did a lot of fun stuff like that. We really made sure the kids had fun. We would take them to the drive-ins. Everybody would pile in cars and meet at the drive-ins, and just did dumb little hometown things we did as kids. We tried to make fun for them and make sure, especially during COVID, they were socially, oh my gosh, missed so many things. I was fortunate that I kind of got away from it during COVID, but we still made sure that they still had fun.
I want to ask you your reflections on being a parent of athletes now. Having been an athlete for so long, probably you feel it's your whole life. How did that inform your view when you had kids who entered athletics?
I'm probably one of those different parents. I think kids should be well-rounded and should do many sports, not just one sport. We let our kids pick the sports they wanted to do. I wanted them to be in some sport, absolutely. Just there's so many lessons in life you learn from sports and being on a team. So both of our kids, I have a boy and a girl. I got them swimming young, playing soccer young, basketball, football, cross country. My daughter ran cross country. My son snapped his femur in half in 8th grade football, and so that whole year he was rehabbing, and that fall, instead of playing football, he ran cross country. He hated that. Oh, that was the biggest mistake ever. But it was good for him as far as what he needed to do for his leg healing. That was a long injury to heal. Yeah, we wanted them to do year-round sports, but not focus on one sport year-round. And my son was also a baseball player. And my daughter never liked cross-country. I had a hard time watching the coach and what he did or didn't do with her. That was tough for me. Mm-hmm. She tells the story. We live fairly close to where they train, and I would pull up to pick her up, and I'd say, well, what did you do today? Because I felt like he wasn't preparing them enough. And so every race was a trauma for them. They weren't prepared, in my mind. And I would pull up and say, what'd you do today? Well, we ran for 10 minutes and we did hills and that, like they wouldn't do enough to race a 3-mile race. And I'd say, well, put your book bag in the car. I'll see you at home. And I would make her jog home. It was about 1.5 miles.
You're like Mother of the Year.
I was Godzilla as a mother of a cross. Yeah. But it was like they would cry at the end of every race because they weren't prepared. And I was just like, just jog home. You don't have to go fast. Just jog home. Get some more miles in, because he never had them do any miles. He'd send them out for 10 minutes. Well, the slower you run in 10 minutes, the less you cover, and I had a hard time with that. And she did gut it out. She did do all 4 years in cross country. She wanted to play tennis her senior year. I'm like, come on. What are you going to do? You're not, And so she did gut it out, hated every second of it. But it was good for her because she was a better basketball player than she was a runner. She ran track. She did, fairly well, but she was a basketball player. We did do year-round basketball. Well, not year-round, but we played AAU basketball during spring track season. And then they had summer leagues and things. So she did kind of do basketball year-round a little bit toward the end, but it wasn't the only thing she did. And my son was always a baseball player first, as was my husband. So he wanted him to be the baseball player, but he also played football and he did basketball for a while. He never ran track. Disappointing. He was really fast on the football team. He was good when he was healthy, but he was little, so he was hurt a lot. But I didn't want them to do year-round anything, only one sport. If you look at the Patrick Mahomes of the world, talk to some of these athletes that have great success, they were 3-sport people. They talk about that a lot, about how important that was.
Let me ask you to now step back again and say, are you satisfied in the changes over these now nearly 4 decades in women's sports, having been an early one who was there on the threshold of women's moving from club to official sports and coaching through it, raising kids through it? How do you see the evolution of women's sports?
Well, it's definitely more fair than it used to be, and I know that not everybody sees eye to eye to that. I mean, IUP lost their wrestling program to women's sport. They had to make the number of sports even for men and women in college, so some of the men's programs died out because of it.
Right.
And so there were some bitter people in the beginning, but in all fairness, why shouldn't the female sport, the athlete, be able to have the same opportunities as a male as far as sports are concerned? I think that it's come a long way. And you look at professional women's sports, and I mean, that didn't happen that long ago.
Yeah.
Professional women's sports. It's definitely Title IX impacted that all happening and the opportunities that were out there. I do think that it's more fair now. I don't know that the monies, that's a whole other politics, that I don't pay attention to because it doesn't impact me personally. But you have the programs that bring in the money, the football games and all of those things, and the women's sports tend to not do that. So is that fair? I don't know. I don't want to get into that. But I do feel like the opportunities should be allowed and out there for the same opportunities as a male athlete. I'm grateful for what I had. I don't think I realized what I had at the time. I know I didn't.
Mm-hmm. You were part of a trailblazing generation and a trailblazing group of people that you can be oblivious to.
In the moment.
And even
you're living it. Yeah.
And even protected by your coaches sometime to focus on the task rather than the politics.
Yeah,
let me talk about the other athletes. Who were some of your teammates? Of your teammates, are there some relationships that you've maintained from across the decades?
Sure. Absolutely. Sheila Fleming, for sure. We still get together. She actually came to visit me down in Florida here, and we spent some time together and getting some miles in. We might walk them instead of run them together, but our good friend Lee Johnson Falconbridge just passed away this past year from a long bout of cancer. Still maintained that friendship through the years, and Mary Ellen Tesla as well, and we all lived together at one point. Well, Sheila didn't live with us, but Mary Ellen and Lee and I lived together. One semester I lived on campus with my own money, $800, to live further away from campus than I lived growing up, but I needed to do it and I wanted to do it.
You lived with teammates?
Yeah, absolutely. They were my friends. I think I told you earlier that I joined a sorority to make friends on campus. I didn't really need that after I joined the teams, and my teammates became my friends. And so I let that sorority stuff all go. Still keep in touch with a lot of those people. We just had a great big reunion at my house last August. And we talked about this, and I said, I know I wasn't popular because I dropped out of it. It wasn't a popular decision because, of course, that's money-based as well. They want you to stay in for that. I said it was the right thing for me to do, to walk away. I couldn't go to the mixers on Thursday night and run in a track meet on Saturday. You just didn't drink as much. I couldn't drink as much. I didn't weigh anything. I remember doing shots of beer in college. That's how I would drink, because I just do like 2 or 3 shots of beer, and that was all I needed, So I just couldn't drink. I just couldn't do it. I didn't weigh enough. And thank God I recognized that and didn't kill myself, We had fun in college. We had fun, the cross-country house, the parties, and we found and made our own fun, and it was a healthier fun than what a lot of other people did in college, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, let's just a little bit go on to finally the interaction with the men's team. How was the relationship between the women's and men's teams at IUP in track and cross country? Were they close?
Yeah, very close. I said this at Ed Fry's memorial, like literally we took your coach, He was your coach, and then he became our coach. We were very blessed to have him, and he still kept his fingers in the men's program and wrote the workouts and did everything for you guys, even though he wasn't getting paid to do that. I don't think at that point he was doing just the women's stuff. We were very close with the guys' team. They were our friends, and they looked out for us, and we looked out for them. And we did a lot of socializing together. We had the same mentality and taking care of your body, and you had to, although there were some people that abused it more than others. I won't mention any names.
You know who you are.
But some people could do that. I just wasn't one of them. And I also had to go home and be at my parents' house, So I was sheltered. Even in college, I was sheltered from all of that, I think. Yeah, we were very close. Still my good friend. I still keep in touch with so many. Ed Phipps will call me out of the blue just to see how I'm doing, just a good friend. I always said, of all the guys I ever met through my formative years looking for a spouse or whatever you were doing at that time, having relationships, like guess I should say, not looking for a spouse, having relationships. The cross-country guys were the best guys. They were committed. They were loyal. They knew how to work hard. And they were just good people, all of them, everybody. I have such fond memories of all of my college cross-country friends, male and female, just the best memories.
That's fantastic. You're a very good storyteller. You're sincere, and you know yourself pretty well. Thank you very much for sharing all your stories. It's very nice to talk to you. You're very positive, and you have good insights into your own life and career. Because you're humble and you have good self-insights. It's just fantastic.
Thanks for thinking of me to do it. I appreciate it. I would have never done something like this had you not reached out.
Dana, thank you very much for sharing your time and your stories about running in the 70s. I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy hearing from you and enjoy reflecting on the same things you did.
Thank you again, Matt. I appreciate the opportunity.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.